You're in my mind, you're in my heart. I wish I knew right from the start. All my friends say you break my heart. A heartbreaker right from the start. Do 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 do. Oh, my friends say you break my heart, a heartbreaker right from the start. Alright, apologies everyone for the lateness. Entirely my fault. I did some bad planning. I made some bad decisions. I screwed one over, so it's only going to be me tonight. Many apologies all around to everyone. I will do better in the future. Everyone, we're live. Well, I'm live right now. I'm live right now. Tune in for some nostalgia chat. There we go. Oh, okay. There we go. Got that one sent out. Go do it on Twitter as well. I've tried using Nostr a fair bit in the last whiles. I haven't had a tremendous amount of success with it. I've found it really hard to add people, especially. So I will skip that for today, methinks. But yeah, it's people say it's still interesting. Adam Curry says it's interesting. I trust his judgment, so I'll see if there's any other ways I can get access to it. I've currently tried to use through astral.ninja. I've had the best success with that. Snort.social has not been great. So, and then I also have Amethyst on my phone. Amethyst has, not been, things haven't worked. Things haven't worked 100%. So, slightly disappointing. Let me just message my brother, see if he wants to join the chat. Live now, FYI. Okay. All right. What else we got going on? Okay. Let's make sure that one's good. Yes, thank you, Juan. I feel bad, man. I feel really bad for screwing you around like that. It could have been anticipated. I could have done better. So very much apologies. Westside Baby is also in the chat. Hey yo. So yeah, I'll do a solo episode today. Juan can maybe chuck in his thoughts in the next conversation or the next Mere Mortals Meanderings or whatever it is that we do next. What time period are you most nostalgic about? Cool. It's a little thing in the chat there asking what time period that you were most nostalgic about. I can close that now. Can bring up this. Can make that smaller. Can make this one smaller as well so I can see the live chat at the same time. Okay, all right. I should bring up my own notes. That'll be helpful. And take this off. That's coming in through hot and fine and dandy. And yeah, here we go. Should just bring this up and make sure I've got the Boostagrams also set up. What's the date today? It's the 12th. So I'll be going from then. 12th, 12th, 12th. Beautiful. Okay. Here we go. We all can be mortals. Whoa, yes indeed, we are just mere mortals, and I am the merest of all the mortals. You have Kyron here, and just me today, because I accidentally screwed one around for our live session today, so completely my fault. So it's just going to be me today on the 12th of April, 2023. I was the one who picked this topic, so thankfully I have a lot to chat about. Also, Juan is actually in the chat at his house, so he's providing a couple of little things which I'll be referencing here and there. But the reason I came up for today's topic, nostalgia, was from this very book here, Cannery Row by John Steinbeck. And I did a book review of this not too long ago, so tune into that if you want to know more about John Steinbeck and nostalgia, because it is a very nostalgic book. It's of the 1930s in Monterey, California. And he has this beautiful way of expressing things, of making, crafting his words and creating a scenery and whatnot. And it really got me thinking about nostalgia and being like, oh, wow, wouldn't that have been an awesome time period to go to? Or would it? ? So that's what it came up for. The definition, somewhat, of nostalgia is a sentimental longing or wistful affection for a period in the past. So usually when people are talking about nostalgia, they're talking about a time that once was, of this ideal, I would say it's idyllic, utopic, maybe even, a time period of the past where it's just, oh, I want to go return to that. I think there is a mixing somewhat of that, this current time period is not as good as the previous one as well, which kind of gets mixed within that. But I really just want to focus on this nostalgia period and this idea of longing for the past, of this yearning, and is it useful, is it helpful, all of these sorts of things. Juan's got some stuff in the chat which I'll also be referring to in a second. But the first thing I want to start with is time period in the history, in the past. Where would we actually go to, or things like that? So if Juan's listening, he might even be able to add something in. I was having a little ponder over this, which time history would I want to go to in the past? What do I think would have been an amazing period? And in particular, nostalgia, because there's periods which would be awesome to go to and just know for what was it like back then, caveman days. What was it actually like being around the cave fire and hearing, the first kind of languages being created? What would it have been like in the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, and being in one of the ancient wonders of the seven wonders of the ancient world, that sort of thing? And I can't say there's any period that I look back at in this longful, this wistful, I suppose, longing for. Perhaps maybe kind of the disco era of the 80s, where it seemed to be this kind of like free love, vibrancy, LSD kind of in the air, that kind of period. There's something about that slightly draws me to that. But then I just remember all of the awful things that were, the AIDS pandemic that hit that period. Sure, there's the advent of computers, but you're still dicking around trying to manually call up through phone lines, and I don't know if telegraphs were still even being used back then. It's air travel was way more dangerous than it is now. There's all of these things where I think of maybe like a small time period. Going back to Socrates, I could maybe have fit in with the ancient Greeks and whatnot, but nothing comes up in particular. And it seems to be the same for Juan. He says, I don't have any nostalgia for a historical past, only a personal past, which is true. I have this as well. So we'll get onto that shortly. I think what I wanted to start off with is this kind of wistful longing. What is this wistful longing? Why does it occur? And if it is for a time you never have lived, i.e. the disco era for me, then you don't have the full story. And basically, when you get the full story, the stats indicate everything is better right now. You are safer, you are healthier, you will live longer, you'll have better relationships, you'll work less, you'll have less stress. Just think of a metric of well-being, and almost certainly, less violent crimes, less wars, less poverty. And this is a global thing. So take this with a grain of salt. You can have periods where things get better and then it goes worse. The Romans will attest to this. But I think there is something to be looking at the data of just going, no matter what time period you kind of look at, I think there is this yearning of an aspect of the past, but it's not the full past. It's not everything that it was contained within that one moment, that maybe not one moment, but that time period, especially if you haven't lived it. I will be willing to bet there are plenty of people who lived through the 80s and they will say, yeah, that was a cool time period, but fuck, it's better now. Man, I'm much more happier with my phones, with my technology. I work less, I'm healthier. I have access to, more outstanding medical care and all of these sorts of things. So I think it's very context dependent as well. I am currently at the moment single, and there is kind of in me this wistful longing for the past of a relationship. Man, wouldn't everything be better if it wasn't a relationship? And I've been in relationships before, and it's so funny where it's the context when it gets switched a little bit, it can completely turn it on its head. So that's what I've mostly been feeling. Hence, actually, why I was late today and dating issues. But one of the things was I met with my friend Brendan recently and his sister, who Brendan's been on the podcast many times before. Go check out some of those conversations if you're interested. But him and I, we get along really well. We're very similar in many ways in our pursuits, in the way we think and the way we act. And he is also single and his sister is also single. And when we were just chatting, we're talking about some old relationships, some of the funny stuff, and then also a lot of the negative things. And after 20 minutes of talking about ridiculous relationships, of being with people who you weren't meant to be with, of being in a relationship which you hated being in. I didn't have any of those myself, but after a little bit of that, I was just like, holy shit, I'm glad I'm single. And then, all of that yearning, all that wistful longing for the past, completely just obliterated. So I think it is very context dependent of when you're looking at the past and you're yearning and longing for something. It's just worth thinking about, is it just because of this mood I am in at the moment? And if I chatted with someone who is maybe even in the same thing, going through the same thing as I am, but they talk about the past and then you remember, oh yeah, man, that girl, man, that was a lot of work, dealing with that relationship. Man, I was stressed out trying to, please her. Man, I was stressed out trying to make her happy. All of those sorts of things, it kind of adds up. We also have Neo Skeptic in the chat, and he was saying, I yearned for yesterday when I was one day younger. I am nostalgic for retro porn. And yeah, I can kind of get the nostalgic for a piece of the past, much like the steampunk era, or not that there was a steampunk era, creating an era that never was, much like the retro arcades and things like that. You kind of feel like, yeah, man, everything was like Back to the Future and kind of cool, but also shit. It's like, no, for every one arcade game experience you had, there was a litany or a plethora of just other random crappy experiences, not necessarily completely crap. And once again, just because we have technology and phones doesn't mean life is now better and that the phones have only improved our lives. Obviously not. Obviously there's use cases of things going wrong where people are getting stuck stuck into the social media, unable to let go of their phone and that sort of deal. But I think there is the wistful longing and all of this stuff. It has elements of comparison as well. You don't really feel nostalgia when you're happy in the moment, right? If everything was going right for me right now, if I had no qualms or troubles, if I had perhaps, just gone on this vacation, which I was really looking forward to, and I was on a beach in Mexico or Spain or wherever, you're probably not going to be feeling nostalgic of a random time period in the past. You're probably going to be enjoying the moment. And as we know, comparison is the thief of joy. And when you are comparing things, that is when you are going to get stuck in this cycle of longing for the past, of wanting this new thing. So there's definitely some aspects of this wistful longing, this yearning, which is if you set it to the side and you kind of deconstruct it a bit more, I think you can cut away through most of the unnecessary, this adding of things which perhaps weren't true. Now, that doesn't mean to say that there isn't things where it was better in the past. And so we've got one coming in to say, I'm completely opposite in a lot of ways. I'm rabid for the new day to make my past day obsolete and limp in comparison. So he's almost, I was thinking about this as well. Is it possible to have a kind of preemptive nostalgia, much like you can have preemptive worry or preemptive anxiety, which is kind of really funny if you think about it, right? You're worrying about a thing which might happen, but it's not necessarily going to happen. And yet you also won't do things in place to make sure it won't happen. So if you're thinking about a best man speech, like I'll have to do in a couple of months' time, there's no point worrying about it now if I'm not going to do anything to put it in place. So can you have a preemptive nostalgia? Can you have a time period in your life where you recognize nothing is going to be better than it is right now? Everything is going to change in the future, and so I need to treasure this moment, because in the future, nostalgia's, I'm going to look back at this moment. And I think it's kind of possible. I remember some times when I was traveling where I was going, man, this is a pretty unique time in my life. I'm on the top of a fucking mountain in Mexico, or I am, deep in the heart of this random Colombian jungle in this out of this world hostel, which is luxurious and, floating down a river with a bunch of other people on inflatable tubes, But is that nostalgia? Can you have this preemptive nostalgia? I'm not so sure of that. Why I'm saying worrying about the potential of it to happen and be nostalgic about it. I think it's possible, but I think that's also silly. It's kind of nostalgia, but from the future, that sort of deal. And he's jumping out at the moment. So thank you for joining in, one. This will get onto maybe our nostalgic moments and what some of the moments that we are nostalgic about. Actually, before I get into that, I'm going to do the Boostagram Lounge. This is going to be a much smaller episode because it's just me, and Juan and I can't have this back and forth. So I'll jump into the Boostagram. There's more notes from him in here, so I'll address them shortly. But the Boostagram Lounge. So here we go. We're jumping into a Boostagram we got on the 6th of March, 6th of April, as usual, from Mr. Dave Jones. My weekly boost for the Mere Mortalite Nation, 12,112 sats sent using the cron. The big rush boost there. Dave, as always, fantastic coming up and really supporting the show. Really do appreciate that, my friend. And hopefully in the future, there'll be another automatic way similar to this in Podfans where you can be able to support someone, and as soon as an episode drops, you automatically send in a certain amount, which can be kind of predetermined by the podcaster. And I'm hoping Sam will have it so that you can predetermine an amount for the episode as well, much like Dave does here with this very regular weekly schedule that he does. So thank you very much, Dave. We also have Cole McCormick 1 coming in, and he says, for the special brownies and the awesome movie, popcorn, cool face with glasses on, rocket. That's 4,420 sent using Fountain. Cole, host of the America Plus podcast, he does enjoy himself some special brownies. I believe he actually works in a dispensary. We don't have any of those here yet in Australia. I imagine it'll come soon because Australia is always 4 years in the past. Talking about nostalgia, we can be nostalgic about America can be nostalgic about us because we are always 4 years in the past. Whatever happens there comes here 4 years later. So thank you very much, Cole. And check out his show, America Plus, if you want to know more about kind of working in a dispensary and art and things like that. He's very, very good for that. Also have one from Whoneedsdollars. Is a new name. Very, very exciting. Whoneedsdollars. And he says, good, interesting show. 1,021 sats sent using Fountain. Hey, thank you very much, my friend. I'm not sure where you heard about us from. I got some encouraging comments from the Podfather himself about my interview styles and my chat with Sam Sethi. So maybe it was from there. But yes, very, very awesome to see a new person in here. And I'm good. As always, I'm trying to fix things. I'm trying to make this better because we did miss a huge baller boost the week prior from Mr. Chris Fisher, that 2,222, which never actually made it to us, only got caught up. So I want to fix that, and also some stuff with Juan I was meant to do tonight. Apologies, my fault entirely for that not happening. The final one we have here is from McIntosh, and he says, Mount Cox, good times. I was one of the early adopters because of the technology and not because of the ideology. I would have taken the time to understand the philosophy and such better much sooner than I did. My BTC stack would be a lot bigger. But as they say, you get Bitcoin at the price you deserve. Great discussion, gents. Thank you, McIntosh, host of Generation Bitcoin, 2100 sats sent using Fountain. Yeah, look, man, I had my touch point in 2017. I bloody owned Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Litecoin. I kept it all on an exchange for almost 4 years. Go Karen, he gets the philosophy, right? Oh, Lord. And Juan himself, I believe he owned some Bitcoin back in 2013, and Bitcoins, I should say, which... Once again, you get in at the price. Not only do you get in at the price you deserve, but you stay in at the price you deserve. And that is also another aspect you have to take into account, because it is very easy to jump in and jump out and not follow these things. Not understand not only the... I hesitate to say there is an aspect of the BTC ideology to it. I'm not a big fan of ideologies. Check out my book review coming out next week of... Actually, sorry, to be the one after. I'm reviewing Animal Farm. I've already done the review, but it'll take 2 weeks, a couple of weeks till it comes out. I'm not a fan of ideologies, but I definitely understand. Yeah, the philosophy of Bitcoin and whatnot is very important. And go check out Generation Bitcoin to learn more about that from McIntosh. So thank you everyone for doing that. I will also just give a mad shout out to everyone who has been streaming it in. I finally reactivated Satoshi's stream for seeing the stream amounts come in, and it's so regular. It is really nice to see that again. I'd forgotten all about that. It does send me a lot of of invoices and notes though, so can be a little overwhelming at times. But yes, thank you everyone. This is a value for value podcast. Myself and Juan, we sustain ourselves and this podcast through your messages coming in. For us, it's at this very moment, it's not about the amounts. We certainly do appreciate those bigger amounts more. And once again, once you get to a certain level on our leaderboard of 100,000 sats, we will send you a Mere Mortals shirt. And when you get to 1 million sats, we reach out personally and want to do something really personal for you. So just a little incentive there for sending amounts, but also, we just really appreciate knowing that others are getting value from what we're doing. And there is a big onus on my part to make that better. Obviously, doing this a solo episode is not as great value as it would be with Juan. So that's a hit on my part. And, there's reasons that I need to do better, to work harder. And if you also check out the monthly goals for the next month, you'll see I need to work harder, and I'm going to try and put some stuff in place to make sure that does happen and that the podcast gets better. So once again, people are enjoying it and valuing it. So thank you for that. And we'll get back into the regular topic. So what did I want to get onto here? I suppose our nostalgic moments. So Juan mentioned this. He's not particularly nostalgic about the past, but he's nostalgic of the days from school, the simplicity of life, the simplicity of having less, to be honest. But I don't have any nostalgia for a historical past, only a personal past. Very much correct. And he's also saying the downside of nostalgia, while nostalgia can be a positive emotion, it can also have negative effects. Excessive nostalgia can lead to a longing for a past that never really existed, which was kind of what I was talking about before. So yeah, let's get on to some of our nostalgic moments. And Juan's already talked about his there with the aspect of school, of the simplicity of life, and it's pretty much bang on with my notes. So mine were things that I would look back with a kind of wistfulness or a yearning or a longing. And there was three kind of time periods, I guess I would say. One was basically any time before puberty. So any time leading up to roughly around the age of 12 or 13. Any memories that I have from there are relatively untainted. And, you know, me personally, I had a wonderful childhood. I had loving parents who didn't have financial issues. The stress in my life was minimal. They were teachers, so they had plenty of time on school holidays to do stuff with me, to give me attention, to give me love. I owe them so much, and I owe a trouble-free childhood for that. And so there is, you know, if I think of any time before the age of 12 or 13, before I kind of became self-conscious and kind of got in my own head, that period is a magical wonderland. And this is usually what happens with kids, but you know, there are kids who have seen things, felt things, experienced things which no kid should ever experience. And you know, this is where I'm talking anything from traumatic events of a physical nature, whether it just be, you know, hurting oneself or being in a house fire or things like that, or of a more emotional nature of, you know, parents damaging them and things like that, of discipline, or fear, of all the, you know, living up and growing up in that sort of environment. And then also of, you know, the sexual nature, which is the most repulsive of all to the most defenseless of people. They can't have that nostalgia. They don't have that nostalgia of the past, of that childhood, which is a real shame, because I think it is a linking, a bonding thing that most people would look back and go, man, I was, being a kid was goddamn awesome, carefree lifestyle. But there are some who don't have that opportunity, who didn't have that opportunity. So that's unfortunate. Another one for me was 2017, because this was the first year I had real financial freedom and could experiment with everything. So fitness, nutrition, relationships, jobs, hobbies, living style, all of that was a kind of nostalgic thing from the past for me, I guess. It was the first time I got to experience a kind of, what would I call it? I would call it that time period where it was just freedom. And I think there is something in this freedom aspect of nostalgia where you jump into that and then it's like, yeah, brilliant. I wish I could go back to that time. And then the last one was traveling in 2018 or 2019, probably because I had the opportunity to be completely selfish then. So my concerns were limited to a very small sphere of myself, my family to a certain extent, but I could wake up when I wanted to. I could go to whatever city I wanted to. I could interact with whatever people I wanted to. So all of those sorts of things. And I think that period is a period that I would go back to, and I do think of nostalgically every now and then and go, man, I kind of wish I could travel again. I kind of wish I could be in that moment when I didn't have maybe as many responsibilities as I do now, when I didn't have the concerns that are concerning me now of age or relationships or money and all those sorts of things that can get wrapped up and whatnot. So, yep, that's the nostalgia that I certainly felt, and I think Juan would probably have his own moments of very much school life and whatnot of getting back to that time of traveling. A couple of thoughts. Did you ever hit on any jungle chicks? I'm going to be very careful of knowing what a jungle chick is. I certainly hit on beautiful girls. That's kind of my deciding factor, and who are also nice, kind, beautiful girls is kind of the girls that are my type. So yes, that did include Colombians. Yes, that did include Latin Americans, Central Americans, all sorts of American, all sorts of Americans. So Yes, I have talked to them. And Lauren Mooney is, and I never shut up. Well, the problem is with these solo episodes, if I'm not talking, there's just dead air. And so it's not as good. So yeah, unfortunately, I do have to kind of ramble a little bit just to make sure I don't have these long gaps with nothing going on. But everyone should travel. Yes, I will. I will mostly agree with that. 99% agree with that. Some people shouldn't travel, but almost everyone should. So those were the nostalgic moments. One had a little thing here. So historical perspective. The term nostalgia was first coined in the late 17th century by a Swiss physician named Johannes Hofer, who observed it in Swiss mercenaries who longed to return home. There you go. A little bit of trivia there. I had no idea. Yep, would not have guessed that. I would have thought nostalgia, that term would have been around before, or something similar to that. This is definitely a concept I think the Greeks, or I mean mercenaries, were back in those times. You'd think the Asians or the Japanese or whatnot, they would have a specific word related to the longing for, because they've got specific words related to the first inhalation of air on a new summer's day, as the wind rustles the trees. They got a word for that. So I would have thought a word similar to nostalgia would have existed much, much prior to that. But yeah, I think every country, actually, that's a good question. Are there any peoples in the world who don't feel nostalgia, do you think? Is there any culture where feeling a longing for the past or yearning for the past is a negative or downside? I don't think there's a culture like that. You can have aspects such as a religion or whatnot, which perhaps, I'm thinking something like Buddhism here, where evaluating, comparing yourself to the past is not useful. Of perhaps some Christianity or Hinduism or Islam or something, where there would be a rule where you don't want to evaluate too much to the past. God is all giving and all loving, or something like that. Yeah, that's a tough one. Who's usually with me? I usually have my co-host Juan with me, and because I stuffed up today and I was late, he had to go home. So much apologies. It's just me for today. So let's get to the summary and wrap up this shorter episode. So personally, I think living in the past is unhealthy, or the future for that matter. And people who complain about being old at 30, for example, I find that such a bleh statement. If you're already feeling old at 30 and you're kind of, I think that's a lot of that is driven with this comparing to the past. Oh, I wish I was, in my early 20s again. I'm not so much into that, and I just the comparison aspect. I had an ex who she kind of used to like nostalgia. It was this weird thing where it would make her sad but happy at the same time. Where I personally, it seemed to be a very weird emotion that she was feeling, or emotions all back bundled into this thing that she called nostalgia, but I didn't particularly understand it. So maybe there's some people where it has some benefits, but I'm struggling to think of why it would be a beneficial thing to be longing or yearning for something that can never be. I can kind of get it for the future, because then you could do some stuff to change it now if you're longing for a certain type of future, and then you go, oh, well, I can do some things to change that. Yeah, sure. But yeah, longing for the past, I'm not sure it's that helpful. Although it can be kind of fun, especially when associated with a sight, a sound, a touch, a smell, a taste. But personally, I think it's kind of best used sparingly. Sure, listen to a song which reminds you of this certain aspect. I've got one, Aesop Rock's None Shall Pass, reminds me of the first time I moved away from home and the loneliness I felt then. There is something intriguing, connective about listening to that song and it reminding me of this past time period, but it wasn't particularly a good one either. And another song, Bonobo's Kerala, that kind of transports me back to when I was traveling as well. But once again, listening to that repeat on all day, every day, feeling that all the time, I just don't think it's a useful emotion, to something to dabble in, but not to use every time or every day or all the time. and just an acknowledgement that everyone and every time has its problems. So when you think back to even of how you were in the past, sure, it might seem like, man, would have been great to go back to 2018 when I was traveling in Mexico. But oh yeah, wasn't I really, really trying to get a press to stand then? A move I can do with ease now that I can bust out whenever I want. And that was consuming so much of my time. And I was busting up my wrist doing 6 hours a day of the same training in the stupid training method just to get that. Oh yeah, I was doing that at the same time. Yeah, I forgot about that. So I think there is this aspect where you look back into your own past and you might think a time is great, but if you kept a journal of that time, you would go, man, I'm glad I'm not back then. I was a whiny little annoying bitch back then, or man, I was going through some stuff. That was a rough time period. And so every person and every time has its problems, and wistfully longing for this thing which once was is just have a bit of perspective, I would say, is that. So that is it for today, my Meanwhile Lights. Thank you for really joining in. Once again, apologies. I don't like doing these solo episodes. I prefer to do them with one, but due to my own, what would I call it? I'm trying to link it to nostalgia here. Due to my own nostalgic longing for what I wish perhaps I had, I made some decisions which made that untenable for today. So this is a Value for Value podcast. We'll end off on that. A Value for Value podcast. We'll go back to the longing of the old days. Didn't you used to love the days before ads? Well, damn right you did. And this is how you can get it, by tuning into the Mere Mortals, because we have no ads. We have no sponsorships. We accept no money from anyone other than people who willingly give it to us as value for the contribution we have already given them. So there is no onus on us to do a certain style, or speak a certain way, of say certain things or not say certain things. No, all of this, everything that comes out from our mouths is completely to the best, very best of our abilities, completely neutral in the effects that money can have on it. And we do this for a big reason. One, because we like the product that way, and we don't want those outside influences us telling us, whether in a very overt manner, don't talk about this product or this thing, or in a very more sly manner of self-censorship. No, I don't want to be that. I don't want to be like the animals in Animal Farm when bad things are happening and they don't have the guts or the ability to stand up to what they think is right and to their ideals and principles that they hold true and strong. And so that's what I do on this podcast, and what Juan does as well. So we do the Value for Value method. So we put all of this out free of charge. You're welcome to listen to as much or as little out of it as you want, and you don't have to do anything from that. But if you got some value from this podcast, which I hope you do if you're listening in, otherwise, why are you listening? Then I just ask that you repay that in some kind. You can do this by recommending the show to another person, literally clicking share of a link and posting it somewhere where someone else can get it. You could do it by word of mouth and just telling another friend, hey, the Mere Mortals podcast is really cool. They talk about some interesting topics when they are together and not not Karen just doing a solo episode. And then we also have the other methods of talent. If there is a fact which we got wrong, if Juan was just making BS out of his ass with that fact of the origin of the word nostalgia, which I'm betting he used ChatGPT. So I don't know how much do you trust ChatGPT? All of these sorts of things, a talent. Send us in, give us a recommendation of how we can improve the sound quality of the way that we talk with each other, of the topics that we talk about, that sort of thing. And then finally, a Boostagram. So Boostagram is a payment within the actual app with a message attached, or without a message. You can do it anonymously, saying a word of support, just something to us, just indicating that you got some value from this podcast, and that goes into our funds for helping grow the podcast, to making it better, to getting better equipment, to paying hosting costs, all of those sorts of things. We have not taken any money out of this and used it to buy Lambos or or anything. So well, and I don't think we will for a long time, because both of us want this to succeed and to grow, and to be able to one day perhaps support a family, or to be able to make this the best damn podcast that we can. And I think we're getting better. We're always improving, but I still think there's a long way to go until we get to the point that I certainly want us to get to. So that is the value for value model. This is the Mere Mortals. I am Kyron. Thank you for joining in to this slightly rambly solo-sode. I should have a conversation for this Sunday, I believe, but it's going to be kind of 50-50. I'm unsure. So if there is a gap for this following Sunday, apologies. We'll be back to our normal live episode Wednesday, 7 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Times, as usual, from the next Wednesday onwards. And until the next time, my Mere Modelites, that's it for now. Kyron, out. Peace. Okay, thank you, Lauren. Thank you, Wanago in the chat. Thank you, Neo Skeptic. Thank you, my brother, as well. Really do appreciate you tuning in. Once again, apologies on my part for the stuff around Juan and for everyone else. I'll be in the Discord chat if you feel like chatting with me there for the next 45 minutes as I edit this and get it ready for putting out. And yeah, until the next time, everyone at home, peace out.